the banking industry is considered a barometer for the health of the global economy, and a number of financial institutions that work in capital deposits, loans, finance, trade, payments, among others. Given the global economic crisis between 2008 and 2009, American banking sector had profits in 2008 despite several bank failures. Still in 2008, the Japanese economy suffered its worst contraction since 1974 with a fall of 12.7% of GDP, and the Brazilian banking sector emerged almost unharmed from the global crisis because there is a stronger regulation, less freedom to risk, and restricted use to financial transactions. The U.S. financial crisis caused loss of billions of dollars, also among European financial institutions. At the end of 2008, with the global crisis, many banks saw their stock average ended up falling, but in 2010 they recovered. The banking sector ended up having its best performance in the stock exchange. What explains this performance is that banks became more efficient, cut costs, and are lending more, which should influence annual performance in 2010. With the impact of global financial crisis in 2009, the Brazilian GDP could not resist and fell 0.2%. Since 1992, on Collor's presidency, the economy had not receded, and that year the drop was 0.54%. This is the fifth time in 47 years that Brazil's GDP had a negative performance. There were two records in the 80s and two others in the 90s, according to the central bank. The GDP amounted around the year of 2009 was around 3 trillion reals, according to IBGE. The Institute around revised the GDP growth in the third quarter of 2009 from 1.3% to 1.7%, and the previous quarter of 1.1% to 1.4%, with the variation of 0.2% in GDP. The growth of 0.99% of the resident population in 2009, there was a fall of 1.2 in GDP per capita, which was 16,000 reals. The market is divided over the decision of the Monetary Policy Committee, Copom, to maintain the basic interest rate, Selic, at 8.75 per annum. For the central bank, there are enough elements in the economy to justify the high basic interest rates, as the inflationary pressure, with the strong demand and the low industry's idleness. Before, the institution predicted that Selic would close the year at 12%, but now is expected 11%. This year, the interest rate will be high in various emerging countries, given by the danger of inflation. Along with increased reserve requirements in Brazil, China, and India, this year already has a significant impact in the international liquidity. With the stability of Selic, Brazil maintains the lead in the rating of countries with higher real interest of the planet by 4% per year, leaving second Indonesia 2.6%, accounting to consultancy uptrend. The central bank predicts that the gross debt of the government will fall again this year, after the increase in 2009 caused by the spending to ease the effects of the crisis. The resumption of economic growth should ensure the improvement of the indicator of sustainability of public accounts. Also provides that the gross debt will fall 62.9% of GDP in 2009 to 62.5% at the end of this year. If confirmed, the prediction, Brazil will be the only country among 12 survived by the central bank, which will improve this indicator. The prediction goes in the opposite direction of the market. Some analysts have forecast that the debt could in some years reach 70% of GDP, but for central bank, the debt falls again because the economy will grow 60.8% this year. With the heated activity, part of the monetary and fiscal benefits granted during the crisis will end. At the same time, we will increase tax collection. Even with economic growth and sustainable growth in Brazil, the number of branches decrease, unlike the expansion of the national financial system. Brazilian banks have not been shaken by the turbulent international markets, but will cut jobs. While the Banco do Brasil and Caixa Econômica Federal obtained surplus of new employees, the four largest private banks Itaú Unibanco, Bradesco, Santander, and HSBC reduced its staff of employees. The bank that most reduced the staff was Itaú Unibanco, which was in the process of merger. In 2000, there were two major mergers. Unibanco acquired Banco Bandeirantes, and Bank Santander and Banespa also merged to the Santander, which secured a position in the Brazilian banking market. In 2002, Bank Bradesco entered the financial Finasa. The following year, the bank sold its subsidiary BBVA Brasil to Bradesco, and ABN Real Bank bought Sudameris Brasil. However, the total merger of banks occurred only in 2007. In 2006, Itaú bought Bank Boston, the American arm of Bank of America in Brazil, in a deal that was paid in shares. In 2007, ABN Real was sold in a consortium formed by Spanish Santander, by Scottish RBS, and the Dutch Belgian Fortis at the cost of 71 billion euros, the biggest business of the history of the banking industry in the world. 2 years later, in 2009, there was the merger between Itaú and Unibanco, which was combined assets of $575 billion. Even with economic growth and sustainable growth in Brazil, the number of bank branches decreased, unlike the expansion of the national financial system. Brazilian banks have not been shaken by the turbulence in international markets, but they cut jobs. While the Banco do Brasil and Caixa Econômica Federal obtained a surplus of new employees, the four largest private banks, the crisis in Greece raised risk of growth Brazilian economy to lose the momentum. A bank will not lend to other banks, let alone private firms. With plunging of default, it is necessary that the governments and central banks inject funds. The big Brazilian companies have to use financial market. That is, besides the higher cost, elect money from small and medium enterprises. European stocks closed lower with concerns related to the huge debts of some countries in the euro area, again fueling uncertainty in the anticipation of unfolding of crisis in Greece. The situation in Greece is putting pressure on equity markets, putting the bank stocks are amount of the worst results. Tensions in credit markets suggest that crisis in Greece has become stronger in recent days, and investors are starting to show concern about general crisis of liquidity. This should take European Central Bank to try to avoid a potential increase in the seizure of financial markets as seen in 2008. With the prolonged crisis, all countries will face strong volatility at their stock markets and currencies, what is considered natural for economists. Within the expected market until has behaved well, because the uncertainties generated by the crisis are somewhat predictable. Brazil's performance is that country is among countries expected and has a number of matrices that gives stability to economy, and one of these matrices is the efficiency of monetary policy, which has shown results above the better than expected. The banking industry has gone through a global economic crisis in different forms in each country. Some fared better, others not. The Brazilian economic, for example, has one of the few to come out almost untouched from the crisis because of the strategy adopted by the central bank. As a result of the crisis, there was a decline in GDP of 0.2%. Facing the crisis, the banking industry sought alternatives to get stronger. Many banks bought other, merged, or had strategic alliances that aimed greater economic growth, and the best for the two organizations. The number of branches fell also because of the financial crisis. New proposals are being adopted for banks in order that if there is a new crisis, they will pass through untouched.